So they're quite effective. So start with Nythendra. Nythendra is the first boss in Emerald Nightmare. You can't skip her. You have to go through her. She's got some fun little trash, and I'll explain some of the things as we get going. So there's certain things to watch out for. You know, when you go through that encounter, she's basically a sleeping dragon. It's a two-phase fight. Fairly simple. And any kind of boss that you guys do, if you can isolate the mechanics, you make it a really simple fight. So the simplest fight for any player out there is a training dummy, right? It's a patchwork-style DPS encounter. And if you can isolate the mechanics and, okay, so there's this mechanic, what do I do for this one? Great, we've got it covered, let's put it to the side. Another mechanic, got it covered, put it to the side. And if you can isolate all those mechanics and know what to do for them, the rest of the fight is just a really easy training dummy. So Nythendra, same kind of thing. She's a two-phase encounter. She's got a couple of things like Infested Ground here, where she creates little pools of green crap on the ground. She's got a big breath. She's a dragon, right? So what do dragons do? Number one, dragons breathe. So tanking 101, as a tank, you never want to tank the boss in facing your raid, because it's going to breathe on your raid. She's got a tail whip on some of the higher-end encounters, so Heroic and Mythic, she does a tail whip, so don't stand behind her. There's a debuff that comes out as well, which is the rot debuff, and we'll go through all those things as I go through this VOD as well, and we'll go through it. So here we go. So I'll pull up my little VOD here from a little while ago. Alright, so this was the pull here, and basically the way we have it set up, and I'm going to pause it because I can't draw on my screen, unfortunately. I don't have that little tool, it's not working. Basically, we set this up in a 4-point strat, and the picture I'm going to use for this one, so I'm going to pull it up here really quick for you guys. I thought I had it, actually I do have it pulled up. This is sort of our picture for the boss and our sort of setup for it. So we want to use 4 cardinal directions, and we never want to have, you know, be opposite, because let's say the boss is starting to be tanked at the green triangle, then we're going to stand on the star. So we're going to be on the right side of the boss, right? So if the boss is facing down, I'm just going to draw it for later. If the boss is facing down towards a triangle, we are on the right side of the boss, and we're going to be rotating the boss counterclockwise depending on the abilities she does, and going from there. And this is you have to be very proactive with this encounter, because later on when you get into phase 2, it makes your life a lot more difficult if you're not dropping the puddles in the right spot. Here is a little pink. I'm allowed to share this one with you guys. So there's a little picture of that one. And that's sort of how we have our group spread. So that green circle in the bottom is the healing rains, the Afflores, whatever. And that's how we have our group spread out. So we want to minimize how much damage goes out. This is an encounter where you want to be typically, you know, have a loose clump or loose spread, because if everybody is stacked in, especially on heroic and mythic encounters, the debuffs do a lot more damage to you, and they give you even more negative effects. On normal, if you're stacked in pretty close, you just take more damage. On heroic, you actually get a dot on you, and that dot lasts the entire first phase. So we'll go through this encounter. These are all my normal VODs right now that I've gone through, so there'll be some slight changes from normal to heroic, but I'll explain things as they happen, and you guys can sort of follow along as well. There we go. Alright, so we've pulled the boss here. We're using slightly different markers right now. Where's my thing not working? Yeah, slightly different markers. But the boss, yeah, the boss is being tanked there by Deadman Towley and Psycho, 2 of our tanks. You can see us sort of in a loose clump, a fairly tight clump, really. And there's a timer going off right now. You can see on the left side of the screen, there's the rot timer. With that rot timer, you know, 2 people are going to get targeted by a debuff. That debuff is something you need to run out right away. So if you have this on you, get the hell out of the raid as quick as possible. So you'll see the next one, it's going to spawn on, there's a Volatile Rod on Towley, and Braindead and Panzer. You see 2 of our melee get it. They're actually going to the opposite side. And on the right side of my screen right now, that's where we're dropping those debuffs off. Okay, so one of my melee there, Braindead, he actually messed up the mechanic, and he dropped that green puddle next to us. Here comes the breath, and this is where we're going to start shifting the raid over. So now we're using the next cardinal point. The tank is next point over, and we're going to be dropping off any rots behind us. So that one's on Rolo and Karyudo. It keeps pulsating damage, and once the debuff expires, that's where it drops off the green debuff. So yeah, they're DPSing away here. and they go back into the group and do a loose clump there. Panzer and Zorania get it this time. So the melee are actually going to run it to somewhat the opposite side, and you'll see what happens. I mean, you can run it to the same side, just be very careful later on, and you'll see what happens. There's another breath. And during this breath phase, it's super important that you guys are pretty close together, because if somebody is ahead, that breath is targeted on anybody in the raid. If that breath, and our tank's a little bit out of position here because of that really bad puddle, if that breath is targeted on you and you are ahead of the group, I'm going to pause this for a second. If the breath is on you and you are ahead of the group, well then the dragon breathes and everybody else has to run through that breath, essentially taking more damage. So it's really important to be in a fairly close group together. This is phase 2, starting with Nythendra. You'll notice a lot of these little maggots and bugs around the raid. In this phase of the encounter, she doesn't really do anything. She just stands there, little bugs explode. So number one, you'll dodge bugs, and you'll see how, like, when they grow, they explode. And those green puddles that you dropped off in the raid, they actually go back to Nythendra and get reabsorbed. So you'll see what happens here in a second. See those big bugs? They grow, 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 and then they explode. So it's your job as your raider to be situationally aware. You see one spawn next to me there, I move away from it. You're moving away, this is a good DPS phase. And those green puddles, you can sort of see them coming into the boss. Depending on where you place them, you may or may not have room to move. So if you place all of them on one side, which is what we did, or for the most part, then an entire side of the room is completely free for you. It makes it a lot easier. Now, the next thing with the rot debuff is after every single phase 2, or that little sleeping phase, there will now be more rots. So now it's 3 people. So initially it was 2, and it's on me. I ran out quickly. It's Relo, Smallwood, and Zorania. You can see here it's fading on me. It does damage to me, pulses, and I run back into the group. And Relo there is to my left. He does the exact same thing. There's more rots on Ariana and Vic. So they're running off to the opposite side. So one goes behind us. We're trying to drop these off to a safe spot where it gets pulled in. So the more people that get rots, and the closer you are, the more damage is going to happen. So you see how we're all stacked in pretty close here, and there's a breath, and we start shifting over. That was actually a really good stampede by one of our druids. There we go, and they're dropping them off on the side there, and very soon we're going to deal with one more breath, and then we're going to be shifting over again. So those ones where you see where the tank is right now, behind the tank, there's a lot of green puddles. There won't be a lot of room to move during the next phase 2. So there's next rot coming out in a couple seconds. That's rot number 5, and it's going to be on Relo, Vic, and Zorania. They're going to run behind the raid. You got to move out of the raid really quickly because it does a lot of damage. Now, if you don't run out quickly on heroic, the big difference is it will leave behind an infested dot. So let me pull this up really quick here. So on heroic, there is this, infested. So if you get hit by any of the plague stuff, the green puddles, whatever, you get a 7,000 damage ticking dot that ticks every 2 seconds, and it stacks. So it gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and that's going to really hurt the healers a lot. So if you have a lot of stacks of plague and you're not doing the mechanic correctly, your healers are going to hate you. So be very, very careful when you're going through that one. There. So there's the breath. You see how it targets anybody? So a targeted person that was all the way back there, and then we're going to be dealing with the heart of the swarm phase here in about 2 seconds. Now look where these puddles are. Because these puddles weren't placed in a great spot, they're actually going to path through us, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to dodge the bugs as well as dodge the green stuff. So think of Cromrock, right? Think of Cromrock and dodging those green, purple, and orange waves. If you're not in a good spot, you can't really DPS effectively, right? As a DPS, you want to stand there, you want to tunnel, you want to just blow your load on the boss. Well, you can't if you're having to dodge a lot more mechanics. So by being proactive and dropping these puddles in a good spot, it makes your job a lot easier. All right, here comes the heart of the swarm, and see what happens. So there'll be a spot here that I'm going to run to. So I took a look there. Okay, it's going to go there. I'm going to try to dodge these, and I'll dodge one more as they shift towards the boss. At the same time, you're dodging bugs. People are going to take a lot of damage here. I can't remember if somebody died on this one. Yeah, there's a bug exploding. Yeah, hit a couple of our guys there. The druids were just standing on the bug. Like, unless you're trying to start a bug collection, don't stand on the bugs. And now that we've dealt with 2 of these phases, now there are 4 rots coming out. So that is a bit of a softened raid mechanic. Watch what happens here. So 4 people. Shuolo, Vic, and Zarania. And I think there was one more there getting hit, ran the other way. So it gets tougher and tougher as the encounter progresses. And the next rod here in a second. And you can sort of see how we're spread out. So if you see how my raid is right now, they're on the outside of that circle. Did I have that picture for you guys again still somewhere? They're on the outside of that circle. So when somebody gets targeted by, let's say, Roshi and, I don't know, Netoro get targeted by the Rots, well, they get directly out, and they will not hit the melee. They will not hit Prime, Gan, or Baran, all those other people. So you want to minimize how much damage your raid takes by your position. Position's important, right? You're standing in the heals right now. You're getting the heals, but you're minimizing how much damage they take. And there's a 4 rot right now. You can see here, Baran, Kirito, Netoro, and Panzer all got rots. So it's quite a bit more healing intensive on that encounter. Here comes the breath. Again, always shifting to the same side. So alternatively, you could go the complete other way, but it would just flip things around for you. And it is a pretty straightforward encounter for the most part. It is a pretty cool. Yeah, I got some gear there. That was nice. And yeah, when we were testing these bosses, we were all around 850-ish scaled. No, we were 835, I believe. Sorry. When we did normal bosses. So those of you going into normal rating, you'll be, I don't know, it's tuned for being around 835. If you're 835 right now, going into normal rating, you're totally fine. Heroic raids are tuned to being 850. So my guild is going to be going to heroics first, and normals, and then doing keystone dungeons, which would be another, fun thing as well. But yeah, it's a pretty fun encounter. I don't know, it's boring. Dodge the bugs. Make sure you know where to drop puddles. The puddles is the big one. And now the last big thing, and sort of prepping, and I just really should have mentioned this a little bit earlier, prepping yourselves for these raids is you need to have, weak auras or boss mods or something. So what I use is, and I'll go through questions between bosses here. I use, VEM. VEM's a fantastic it's got voice packs, and what I always tell you guys is audible alerts are much more effective than visual alerts, and you can really can and should use both. So if you have something that yells at you, hey, you're standing in puddle, then you'll typically get out of the puddle. If your screen flashes green because you're standing in the puddle, that helps too. And like I've said for a long time is, raid awareness, situational awareness is a learned skill. If I punched you in the face every time you stood in fire, you would learn very quickly not to do that, right? If I lit you on fire every time you stood in it, you'd learn very quickly. So in the same sense, these add-ons are tools to help you succeed, whether you're a normal raider, LFR, heroic, or a mythic raider. Weak aura is another great one. So here's a great link. Oh, thank you. Let me just beat me to it. These raid weak auras are already set. They're tested. They're ready to go. They're super easy to use. Here are Nythendra's weak auras. So basically, I'm going to click this. It's going to redirect me. I'm going to copy all of this. Just copy the string into my weak aura. I'm going to import it like this. Import, paste, done, and click import. And there we go. These are all of Nythendra's weak auras, really. You have the infested one on the far left side, you have the rots, and then you have the actual plague that you're sitting in, the green puddles. So those are the important ones for that encounter. Oh, I guess I already had them set up. Well done. So yeah, so those are already set. I encourage you guys to use them. Rolo here from the stream has made all those weak auras available to you. We've tested them in beta. They work. The one caveat is do not accept the weak auras from any players you don't trust or you don't know, from random Joe Schmo on trade chat or whoever is trying to give you a weak aura. If you don't don't trust them, do not accept those weak auras. Just cancel it because they can be quite malicious at times. But again, these weak auras are super helpful. Okay, questions regarding that encounter. I'm 840, which is recommended item level for normal. 835. You can't do this strat anymore from them changing the rot ticking from 1 second to 0.5 seconds. So you'll do more of a spread. So JVC TV says, you can't really do this sort of closer strat, them changing directions. I have to take a look at the last ones. What is it ticking now? Every 3 seconds for 9 seconds. Are you sure they changed that? 1 second, let me close this to 0.5 seconds. Because right now, Rot on Heroic is taking every 3 seconds for 9 seconds for that debuff. So I'm not sure about that. How come I don't Holy Light very often? I use mostly Flash of Light because we're not really having mana issues and it's not as effective. Okay, I'll answer other people's questions otherwise, like later on if they're not Emerald Nightmare related. But yeah, let me know. Let me know if there's any boss questions as we go through these bosses. Okay, perfect. Will the shared plague damage be a problem with getting 10 stacks from mind control on Mythic? Well, it will. So you'll want to do like a more assigned positions with the Mythic mechanic. And I'll touch on this one really quickly. With the Mythic mechanic, you'll want to control how many stacks you get. You want to get up to 8-9 stacks because your 10th stack will be triggered by the tank and the tank's explosion because it is a raid-wide AoE. So when the tank gets their explosion, where is it? So when the tank gets their explosion here and detonates on the entire raid and gives them a stack of rot, or the volatile rot, whatever, then they'll get mind controlled, and that's when you trigger your MCs. You don't want to get mind controlled when you're really far away from the raid.